Hello, welcome to The Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob, and in this video, we're going to be looking at the Flesh Eater Courts in Age of Sigmar 4. And let me tell you, because this is a video that I'm making, having already had a couple of hour discussion with everyone in the Twitch chat, that these are shaping up to be maybe the strongest, maybe the most interesting army that we've seen so far for Age of Sigmar 4. So if you have already picked up the new Flesh Eater Courts, then I think you're going to be very, very happy. Other players maybe crying into their soup another day. Anyway, thank you to the Twitch chat for being there for me while we talked about it. First thing I want to say about these videos, same as all the others, I've really enjoyed reading all the comments from you as the players or people interested in playing Age of Sigmar 4 or current players and what your thoughts are on the faction previews. So please do leave as many comments as you can. I'll try to reply to as many as I can. I love reading them. They help me be better at what I do, so thanks. Right, let's go look at the battle traits. What are battle traits? Battle traits are the special rules that you get given for your army when you choose to play Flesh Eater Courts. So these are special rules that are always going to apply. So let's go look at them. And they're meant to add the flavor of how your army plays. So the first one is Noble Deeds. So just right here, Noble Deeds. And what this is each of your characters, each of your heroes starts with 0 Noble Deed points, and you can have up to 6 Noble Deed points. That's what Noble Deeds are. And then it goes on to talk about how you can generate Noble Deed points. Each time a friendly Flesh Eater Courts hero uses a fight ability, so every time they fight, for every pip of damage they do, then you generate a Noble Deed point. And that's going to be in every combat phase. However, if your companion, or those are normally mounts, any companion weapons do any damage, you are not going to generate any Noble Deed points. Super easy. Then you have the ability to generate Noble Deed points by doing a prayer. So if you successfully chant a prayer, then you're going to gain 1 Noble Deed point for that hero. And if you successfully cast a spell, you're going to generate 1 Noble Deed point for that hero. So you're going to be trying to get as many of these Noble Deed points as you can, specifically because they're going to be allowing you to have +1 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons, including companion weapons, so that'll be like mounts and stuff, used by friendly Flesh Eater Courts units where they're wholly within 12 inches of any friendly heroes that have 6 Noble Deed points. Now, +1 attacks characteristic is actually massive, especially also to companions, because it's really going to uptick the amount of output that you can do, especially when we look at Crypt Guard later. They have 3 attacks each. That means they're going to go to 4 attacks each. And seeing as you can have a unit of 20 Crypt Guard, that's going to take you from 60 attacks to 80 attacks, which is a lot. So Feeding Frenzy, +1 attack, that's a passive, and that's going to be in every single combat phase. So that is +1 attack to all the War Scrolls, which is really good. The next one is a Muster Guard ability, which is done in your movement phase. You pick a friendly Courtier hero that has 1 or more Noble Deed points. Courtier is a keyword that will be at the bottom of the War Scrolls for certain units. And then you pick one Courtier hero that has 1 or more Noble Deed points. You spend either 1 or 2 of those Noble Deed points. If you spend 1, then you can return 1 slain model to a serfs unit, wholly within 12 inches. And if you spend 2, you can return 1 knight model to a unit wholly within 12 inches. Then what you would do is you would be able to start again and redo that ability. So you'll be able to constantly do that. So this doesn't mean you can just do it once. It means you can do it as many times as you have Noble Deed points. So if you did have 6, that means you can return 3 knight models or 6 serf models. Super easy. Next one is Summon Loyal Subjects. And this is very much like we've seen with other faction previews, where you can take a slain unit and you can spend 6 Noble Deed points to pick a friendly serfs or knight unit that's been destroyed, and then you can bring that unit back at half strength. So if it was a unit of 10, you can bring back 5. If it's a unit of 6, you can bring back a unit of 3. And you bring them wholly within 12 inches of the board edge and more than 9 inches from all enemy units. This is obviously an insane ability. The ability to bring units back from the dead is great. And it doesn't require a command point, which many of the other abilities we've seen. It also doesn't require you to have a piece of faction terrain, like Gloomspite Gits, which you can destroy. Therefore, it means you're more likely to be able to bring those units back from the dead, which is obviously really good, because that makes sense for a Flesh Eater Courts army. Okay, and then you have the Royal Blood ability, which is once per turn for the army in your hero phase. Pick any number of friendly aberrants, so that's another keyword found at the bottom of War Scroll, and you can heal D3 to each target. So that was something previously on their War Scrolls, but now they're just going to heal D3 in each of your hero phases. So a little bit of healing in addition to this. And don't forget, you can use those generic command abilities like Rally for some additional healing in these armies as well. So super reliable ability to bring units back from the dead because you've just got to generate deed points. And in addition, you've got more output for your army. And I feel like people are going to be much happier with being able to have +1 attack than you would like -1 to hit like we've seen for Carriage and Overlords, because doing more attacks is just normally very fun. Battle formations is the next thing we're going to look at. And a battle formation is like a sub-faction. It's effectively like a style of army, and there are 4 to choose from for each army in Age of Sigmar 3. For the Flesh Eater Courts, the one that they've shown is Ghoul Patrol, and the Gore Splattered Hunters is the ability. What happens is when players are alternating picking units to use a fight ability, when it is your turn to pick a unit, you can pick 2 Crypt Ghoul units instead of 1. Neither unit can have Strike Last. Now, that's kind of worded weirdly. Obviously, it's a run-on sentence, and what that means is that neither unit can have the Strike Last ability when you choose the 2 units, but as it's written, it's kind of like makes them immune to Strike Last abilities, but that should get cleared up in FAQ. And also, you know, you've got to do some creative, like, I mean, that's how it's written, but that doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. It'll get sorted out. But it means choose 2 units that don't have the Strike Last effect, and those 2 units can fight after each other, which is good. So that means you're kind of like the Lumineth Realm Lords, which is cool, and we like that because your army is mainly melee focused. So now those 2 big units of Crypt Ghouls that we talked about, or Crypt Horrors, or Crypt Ghouls specifically in this case, Crypt Ghouls are going to be able to fight at the same time. And that's great because you can do a lot of attacks It does go on to say that there are some other battle formations. The one that sounds the best is the Lords of the Manor, who rally more soldiers to the cause. And seeing as you're already healing a bit, bringing units back from the dead, more rallying, bringing more models back feels great. Next up, they show off an Arcana and Incantation. When you're writing your army list for Age of Sigmar 4, what will happen is you have to choose a battle formation. So you choose your army, Flesh Eater Courts, choose a battle formation, and then you have to pick a spell law that all your wizards gain access to, and you choose a manifestation law, which there are generic manifestation laws which are connected to endless spells, and because you're playing Flesh Eater Courts, you also have a pack of endless spells, the Corpse Mare Stampede, the Chalice of Ushran are some of them, and then you can choose that, and then you'll be able to cast those with wizards, and they're free points-wise. So you're always going to want to choose a manifestation law and bring some endless spells. There are also some generic ones, like the endless spells that we've seen, you know, that anyone can take, like Purple Sun. Okay, what does it do? You cast it on a 7, you set it up within 9 inches of the caster and more than 9 inches from enemy units. So that's how it works. You need a wizard to cast it. And then you have a profile for it. It's got 10 health and a 5-up save. And one of the coolest things about Age of Sigmar 4 is that endless spells can be killed. And I feel like you're going to be able to kill one and they're going to be able to recast it again. Which, seeing as you're going to potentially be able to cast 3, it means there's going to be loads of endless spells on the board for each player during Age of Sigmar 4. So make sure you get your endless spells ready. Make sure you get hyped up for this, because this is going to be a core mechanic of Age of Sigmar 4. So it's got 10 health, 5-up save, and it moves 12 inches. And it moves in your movement phase. And effectively what it does is it moves and it can pass over enemy units but can't end in combat. And you pick 3 enemy units that they moved across. On a 2+, they take that much D3 mortal damage. So you roll a D3 for each of the 3 units, 2+, and then D3 mortal damage to each one. So potentially 3 D3 mortal damage from a free endless spell that's going to move in each of your movement phases, which, if you compare this to other spells that we've seen, which just do like a D3 mortal damage, this is very effective and is going to be, I would say, something you're going to want to cast a lot. We'll see if that ends up being true. I'm not really sure, but it feels very strong in my opinion, and I think you're going to be really, really happy with this. Okay. So now we go on to look at the units. And I got to say, looking at the other faction previews, and Ushran maybe is going to cement this, in my personal opinion, feels like it's all about those key centerpieces for Age of Sigmar 4, because Ushran is a badass. If you're playing Flesh Eater Courts, I don't see how he's not an auto-include. Obviously, let's put some context on all of these reviews. We don't know the points for any of the models, so that's an important thing to talk about. Ushran's got 16 health, a 4-up armor save, and big news, a 5-up ward save. So that means he's very survivable. He's a 2-cast wizard, a monster, hero, unique, and a war master. And we have had confirmed now by a leak that a war master model has to be your general, which means when you put them in a regiment, which is how you build your army list, you're going to be able to take 4 units in that regiment. Okay, so he's pretty survivable, 16 health, 4-up save. We know he heals D3 as well, and a 5-up ward save. So what else does he do? Well, he slaps in combat. He's got 4 attacks, hits on a 3, wounds on a 2, rend 2, damage D3 plus 3. And in addition, 8 attacks, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 2. And sure, he's not going to punch through the biggest armor at rend 2, rend 1. But he's going to absolutely slap some people and then generate noble D points immediately, which is good. He's got that battle damaged ability, which all monsters have. So his monstrous talons are going to go from 8 to 6. And then he's got a bunch of passives, which are really strong. First one is the Carrying King. And while this noble has 6 noble D points, the effective Feeding Frenzy on Flesh Eater Corpse models is going to affect all Flesh Eater Corpse models within 24 inches. So all Flesh Eater Corpse models wholly within 24 inches, instead of 12, are going to have +1 to their attacks characteristic. Very good. We love that. That's great. You can do much more damage. He's also got, in your hero phase, the Epicenter of Delusion, where you pick one of the following effects to apply until the start of your next turn. Previously, these were battle traits, so now these are locked into Ushran himself, and it feels like that's the reason that these centerpiece models are going to be so important. And what do you get? So, you can add 1 to wound rolls for attacks made by friendly Flesh Eater Corpse models that target a monster until the start of your next turn. So if you are up against like Mega Gargants or Stonehorns or something like that, +1 to wound is a great buff, and that is very, very effective. And that's going to be all models, including himself. Then Crusading Army, add 1 to run rolls and charge rolls for friendly Flesh Eater Corpse minis if you've got some sort of deep striking you want to do. So you'll normally deep strike from 9 inches away from your opponent, +1 to charge, makes that an 8-inch charge. It's quite nice. Defenders of the Realm, add 1 to save rolls for friendly Flesh Eater Corpse units while they're contesting an objective you control. This feels like this is really good, especially on Ushran, that's going to put them on a 3-up armor save, then a 5-up ward save. That's really nice. We love that. And then the Grand Tournament, add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by friendly Flesh Eater Corpse heroes if they charge in the same turn. So if you're running a bunch of monsters, maybe that's more effective because you would have a hero on a monster, not just a monster. +1 to hit is quite nice as well, but you can do that with a command point. So it feels like the +1 to wound against monsters is really great, in my opinion. +1 saves is really great as well. Then he has an amazing Rampage, which is done in any combat phase, which means every combat phase. And you do this once per turn across the whole army. You pick up to 3 enemy units in combat with this unit to be the target. 3. I'll say it again. 3, not 1, 3. Roll a dice for each target. If the roll exceeds the target's control characteristic, the target has a strike last effect for the rest of the turn. Okay, let's talk about the control characteristic. On Ushran, it's 5. And on many large monsters, it seems to be about 5. On things like Kragnos, it's 15. So, of course, you're never going to be able to make Kragnos strike last. But you are going to be able to make quite a lot of other units strike last. Ogres, for example, we saw the other day, they have got a control value of 2. So you only need to roll a 3 up to make them strike last. And this is done, again, it's important to say, in any combat phase. So ogres can charge you, and then you can make them strike last. That's really nice on Ushran, because then he is going to slap them back. And what's best is this happens on 3 units. So less effective against monsters, more effective against other units. While we're talking about controlling objectives, don't forget, the Honest Wargamer objective rings are now available on sale worldwide. If you'd like to get some, there's a pack of 8 objective rings that you're going to need for Age of Sigmar 4, where you are going to control objectives. You're going to need these. There's faction tokens. There's a bunch of stuff. They're all available. I'm including the link below. But you're going to need those for controlling objectives. So as well as being able to make units strike last, being able to buff your entire army with +1 attack, and in addition to being able to give out all of those other bonuses from the Epicenter of Delusion, you got a great spell that Ushran has, which is cast on a 7, called the Glimpse of Delusion. You pick an enemy unit within 18 inches, then you pick another enemy unit within 3 inches of the enemy unit you chose to be the target of the spell, and then you're able to choose one of their melee weapons, and you're able to make the one enemy unit fight the other enemy unit, because the narrative of Flesh Eater Corpse is that they are deluded, noble knights. And so what you would be doing is you would be, effectively making them have a delusion as well and attack themselves. I gotta say, Ushran feels amazingly good, and in addition, the model is great, so I don't see why this isn't going to be included in most army lists. Points is going to be important. Next up is a Marrow Scroll Herald, and this is nuts. Absolutely, like, obviously, he's also actually technically nuts because he's suffering from a delusion, but this is also incredible war scroll. 5 health, 5 up save, not that survivable, with a 6 up ward save. So yeah, sure, not super survivable. Isn't a combat piece. You can just ignore that he's not a combat piece. Number 1 though, talking about survivability, he's got a passive called Don't Shoot the Messenger, which, while this unit is not in combat and is wholly within the combat ranges of 3 or more friendly Flesh Eater Courts infantry models, so just models, not units, it is not visible to enemy units. So enemy units can't even see it. So it won't be able to be shot at. It's not going to be able to be targeted by spells. So it's much more survivable. Okay. Then he's got this amazing ability called the King's Entreaty, which is done once per turn across the army. So if you did have 2 Marrow Scroll Heralds, you'd only be able to do it once. But it's done in any charge phase, which means it's done in every charge phase, including your opponent's charge phase. What you do is you pick an enemy unit in combat with this unit to be the target. Easy peasy. Then you roll a dice, and on a 3-up, you pick one of the following effects. Number 1, pick a friendly Flesh Eater Courts unit in combat with the target to have strike first for the rest of the turn. Crazy. Crazy. So now you charge Ushran, yeah, and you don't have he can't make you strike last. Well, don't worry, we'll make Ushran strike first. Amazing. But it gets better. We can go deeper. Welcome the Disciple. And this is incredibly narrative and thematic, which I enjoy. What you do, the target has the infected keyword, and for the rest of the battle, each time your opponent declares a command, spell ability, or prayer ability for the infected unit, you roll a dice. On a 5+, if they declared a command ability, it has no effect, and the command point is still spent. If they declared a spell or a prayer ability, the spell or prayer fails. So you just shut down an enemy unit a third of the time. Now, he is going to need to be in combat to make that happen, which means that's going to really bring his survivability into question. But he's able to do this in any charge phase. So he's going to be able to do that in your turn and your opponent's turn, and he constantly infects units. So do you want the strike first effect? Do you want the infection? The infection immediately sounds really strong, but you know, you're maybe going to have to sacrifice this unit because he's going to get killed. Who knows? There's some real counterplay here, and it's going to be very interesting. But very thematic, very cool, and very, very strong, in my personal opinion. Okay. Then we get a unit of Crypt Guard. We get a preview of the Crypt Guard. They are a unit of 10 models, and they have 1 health each with a 6-up save and a 6-up ward save. So not very survivable. But you can have up to a unit of 20, because obviously you can reinforce them once. In Age of Sigmar, what you do if you would like to have bigger units, you take whatever the size of the unit is, and then you double it. So you buy a box of 10, you can have 20 as a unit. Obviously, some units aren't able to be, you're not able to have multiple versions of them. For instance, Ushran is a unique character, so you can only have one version of Ushran. And in addition, monsters and many units like that, you can't reinforce, which is what we're talking about. But normally it's like infantry and cavalry and other stuff like that. So they've got a control value of 1, easy peasy. So 10 of them are going to count for 10 for holding an objective. And they have got 3 attacks each. Hit on a 4, wound on a 4, rend 1, damage 1. Obviously, if you have the deed points, these are going to go up to 4 attacks each. That's really nice. In order to keep your characters alive, then the Royal Bodyguard passive means that friendly Flesh Eater Courts heroes wholly within range of their combat range, so wholly within 3 inches, are going to have a 5-up ward save versus a 6-up ward save. They also have a great ability as well, which is a reaction that you do in the combat phase. You declared a fight ability for this unit. So when this unit declares to fight, if any damage points inflicted by attacks made as part of that fight ability are allocated to enemy units, those enemy units cannot use commands until the start of your next turn. Until the start of your next turn is really, really good. Like, no commands, which means you can't issue them and you also can't receive them. So survivability aside, these guys look like they're really good in my personal opinion. So yeah, absolutely excellent. Next up, we got the Royal Zombie Dragon. This is a single model. It's a big monster. It's got 14 health, a 4-up save, and it has a 6-up ward save. It's got a control value of 5, so like Ushran, so it's going to be good for that. And moves fast, movement of 12. As a combat profile, it's got a shooting attack, which is Pestilent Breath, which is 10-inch range. That's 22 inches effective range. D6 hits, which I know is a bit risky. Hits on a 2, wounds on a 4, which is bad, and it's only got rend 1, which isn't great. But it's damage 3 and shoots into combat. That feels like that could potentially spike a crazy amount of damage just from a shooting profile. And the fact that you can't lock it down because it's going to be done in combat is very nice. Then it's got 2 melee profiles. Draconic Maw is 3 attacks, which do 3 damage, and Draconic Claws are 7 attacks, which do damage 2. The Draconic Claws don't have as many attacks if this unit's taken 10 or more damage, and it's got 2 different abilities. It's got Vantage Point, which allows you, when you're doing deployment, to put it in reserve, so effectively put it off the board. So you deploy your models and you go, oh, I'm going to use my Vantage Point ability to put that in reserve, which means it's not on the board when you're doing deployment. Then in your movement phase, you can bring that in from reserve, like a kind of later deployment, and you can set it up anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches from enemy units. And it's at this point, maybe you're going to want to use Ushan's ability to add +1 to charge, because that way it's only going to be an 8-inch charge. And then finally, it's got this ability called Soaring Terror, which is done once per turn across the whole army. So if you were to have 2 of the Royal Zombie Dragons, you're only going to be able to do this once. And you do it in any combat phase, which means every combat phase. If this unit charged this turn, roll a dice. On a 3+, this unit can move 2d6 inches. It can pass through the combat ranges of enemy units that must end that move in combat, then pick an enemy unit that this unit passed across during that move. You inflict d3 mortal damage on that enemy unit. That's really good. So you're going to be able to charge, move through your opponent's unit, and then be somewhere else. And seeing as your combat range is 3 inches, you're going to be able to attack a load of stuff. So you're charging through stuff, you're potentially counter-charging, which is a command ability that they showcased I talked about in an earlier video, where you're going to be able to charge in your opponent's turn. Then I can move an additional 2d6, and then I have a 3-inch pile-in and a 3-inch weapon profile. Really feels like this unit can deploy from Deep Strike. It can travel its 9-inch charge, move an additional 2d6, and then be attacking stuff 6 inches away. So I think that makes it have something like, what is that? 2d6, 12. It's very far. Someone could do the math and leave them in the comments below. Anyway, that's everything for the Flesh Eater Courts. And having obviously done a preview for each one of these, I personally would say that it feels like this is stronger than as strong as the Tzeentch one that we've seen, and feels really strong. More importantly, it feels like they got a lot of flavor, rules that really represent how they work. And maybe the points on these War Scrolls are really high. Maybe the recursion or bringing the units back from the dead isn't as strong as maybe we think. We don't really know right now. Again, we're kind of operating in the dark. Everyone's got feelings about these things, and that's super important because you're probably really passionate about your hobby. I know I'm passionate about my hobby, so I can understand why you might be like, oh, I don't know if it is good. Maybe it doesn't feel like it's going to be good to play against, but we'll really have to see how it all comes out in the wash. Don't forget, it's all about the missions is how you're going to score points. It's also going to be how doing battle tactics. So all those things are going to be really important as well. Anyway, we have a really active Discord community. If you'd like to join it, you access it by joining Patreon, which is cool. We keep talking about these things as things happen, and you can go and check them out in the comments. Or you can go and join. The link is down below, and then we've got some really good faction chats if you'd like to join. Thank you to the Twitch chat who hang out with me while we make these videos and talk about these things, which is fun. And thank you very much for watching my videos and subscribing and liking and leaving comments. It means a lot to me. Thanks very much. See you soon.